Hello there. Generally speaking, when I meet people, I make the assumption that they're reasonably intelligent. If I'm talking to them about any particular issue, I sort of make the assumption that they know something about that issue. Uh, if you talk to them for a little while, you can usually tell that they don't. Uh, but most of the time, I go off with the assumption that they do, and we're discussing whatever we're discussing. Uh, I do this because in order to interact with people on a day-to-day basis, you gotta sort of assume that they're more or less as intelligent as you are. They may not be as educated in whatever particular thing you're talking about. Say, if I'm talking about photography with them, I'm pretty much interested in photography. I know a lot about it. So it's not really very likely that a lot of the people I talk to are going to know that much about it. We're going to be talking on a more simple level. But I'll talk with them, you know, as much as I can and assume that they know basically what they're talking about when they talk about something. I've recently started to question this when I'm dealing with people that are of a strict religious background. Um, my reasoning is something like this. You know, if you were brought up and taught a strict religious belief system, this kind of necessitates that what you do is discard evidence that counteracts your belief system. A person who believes in the creation story in the Bible is certainly not going to believe any of the evidence to evolution, for instance. It really doesn't matter whether the preponderance of evolution or preponderance of evidence is in favor of evolution and that the creation story really doesn't have any evidence, any objective evidence at all. They're going to have to do that if they want to believe that story. Now, what this makes me wonder about these people is this. You know, if you have been brought up and taught a mindset that allows you to dispute and discard evidence that counteracts what you are thinking, what your belief system is, then how am I to think that anything you talk about outside of that is any better? I mean, if you're willing to do that because it disputes your belief system, then when we're talking about an issue, say racism, how do I know that anything you think about racism is any different? You're not going to look at the facts objectively and say this racism overall is a bunch of bullshit. What you're going to do is you're going to, if you believe that, you are going to discard any facts that tend to work away from it. And this would work with any issue at all. You know, maybe you think Fords are better than Chevys, and you're just going to discard any evidence that one or the other would be better than either. You know. Now, what I want you to think about here is, do you want a person who is capable of just totally disregarding evidence to be sitting in any kind of position of authority? If this person is capable of disregarding any evidence whatsoever, do you want him deciding what your children will be taught in school? Would you want to elect this guy as president of the United States? I mean, he can disregard evidence if he feels like it just because it's his belief. Oh, wait a minute. We did have a president like that. That's right. Sorry, you can forget about that particular part. I mean, after all, this is what George Bush did, didn't he? He had evidence that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but he wanted to go into Iraq. So he disregarded that evidence, made up his own evidence, and proceeded to start a war that we're going to be stuck in for how long? We're paying for it. I don't want to pay for it, and I'm sure you don't want to pay for it either. We have this depression going on now, recession, whatever they want to call it, going on now. And all the states and all the government agencies are cutting back on expenses for everything because they're saying they don't have any money, and yet they have money to spend over there in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is absurd. And it all came along because this guy was able to just disregard the facts in the case in order to do what he wanted to do. I don't think people like this should be in any position of authority. I don't want this person trying to decide what kind of science class my kid is going to be in, because I don't want my kid being taught that fantasy they call intelligent design. I don't want them deciding that we're not going to teach this kind of math, because if you get good in that kind of math, it's going to make you question their religious beliefs. I don't want them deciding what is going to be in the history courses if their idea of history courses is Bible history. You just can't trust a person like that to make an objective judgment on anything. Why would you want him in a position of authority unless you were a person who thought exactly the way he does? In which case, you're not a person to be picking people for that either. The whole idea that fundamentalist Christian people or fundamentalist religious people of any type are capable of just outright disregarding any facts that tend to dispute their religious beliefs means that they're not really in a position where we should be putting them in any position of authority, anywhere, because they're not thinking clearly. They're not thinking straight. I'm not saying necessarily that people who don't believe in religion think straight. There's plenty of stupid people around, and there's plenty of stupid people that are non-religious too. I run into them all the time. But I think it's the willful stupidity that bothers me. It's not that these people are just uneducated. It's not that they're just plain stupid. They just can't think straight. It's that these people make a conscious decision that they don't want to know anything that comes into conflict with their religious beliefs. And this is no way to do things. Here in America, and really everywhere in the world, you've got to kind of leave room for the other guy. I don't believe what you believe, so you've got to leave room for me to believe what I want. And I leave room for you to believe what you want. If you want to go around and believe in God, I don't have any problem with that. But I don't want you making laws about that. And it seems that more and more this is where we're heading. These people that are religious fundamentalists, they're very vocal, they're very out there in your face. They're trying to get people elected, and they don't seem to have any moral qualms about any of the techniques they use to get these people elected. George Bush didn't have any trouble at all trying to smear Kerry's war record. And, that he was hiding behind Daddy during the war, and he had no problem smearing somebody who actually went there and fought. I didn't agree with the Vietnam War, but hey, the guy was there. Don't smear him for your own political gain. But that's the way politics works. And these people are learning, and they're getting very good at it. And I think it's time for a lot of people to stop looking at these belief systems and saying, oh, well, we've got to respect each other's belief systems. Let's face it, if their belief system is absurd, it deserves ridicule. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out there and every person you meet like this, you just make fun of them constantly. But if they come up with an issue and start defining it in terms of how their religious beliefs are, you really got to get up there and get in their face and stop it. If they want to say their belief system means gay people shouldn't get married, well, you've got to argue the point with them. And the reason for that is this. If you don't stop these people when they are going after the gay people, if if you don't stand beside gay people, who's going to stand beside you when they come after you? And you know something, they will come after you eventually.